Alright, picked up the last sheet of 0.1 inch aluminum and about 7 3/4 by 3/4 inch angles. So just gotta cut and weld to make the dry tracks and then duplicate that a second time for the lids. Then I gotta make a template for the sheet for the top there. I'm gonna have to lie down inside the boat and get my girlfriend to help me put the sheet over top so I can trace out all the openings, because I need it to be exact cuts, because the sheet, the piece that goes here is going to be part of the lid, so I don't got much tolerance to work with. Other than that, I gotta finish framing out this one box and the middle one for the gas tank, so I'm gonna need one more stick of the 1.5. What else? I got to replace some lights because these have been chafing up and it tore a bunch of them, and I tried fixing them and it's just too much of a pain in the ass, and for $30 I'm just going to buy another 8-pack of lights. I already lost 2 over here on this side. So yeah, hopefully this weekend I can start getting this all cut out. I bit the bullet and got the big T tank of argon, because the little Q tank here, they want $120 to refill this. It's 80 cubic feet, whereas this is 300 cubic feet and it was $225. So it's a rental, so in a year I gotta pay another $75, but this is the equivalent of 4 of those little guys. So hopefully that's enough gas to finish welding up all the hatch frames here, and I will report back with an update. So I got 2 of the hatches mocked up, at least. These ones are all cut and welded. This one's just held up with a couple C-clamps for now till I get the right height. Just got to grind down some of the welds where you can see them on the front surfaces. Bottom sides I don't really care too much. For the track, I think I'm just gonna, once I get them to the right height that I want to, I think I'm just going to put a couple tack welds every couple inches, and then ultimately for the seam here, I had to cut this one short because with this one here, it was a really tight fit to get it in, so it was a ton of grinding. So I decided to make it a little on the smaller side and then tack it to connect it and hold it up, and then have it in enough spots where it's strong. And then to make it actual like waterproof, I'm just going to run a bead of black silicone, because eventually everything's going to be painted in black. So anything that you can see through the EVA deck foam will just be black, so it kind of looks like it's seamless. But I have 2 of the 11 hatches done. But that's the look of the dry track. So any water will just slip into here. And then I haven't decided whether I want to have 2 holes on each side or just 1 in the middle. But there's going to be like a little aluminum tube, and then it's going to route down to a hose. Because right in the center of the boat, I have a channel that goes all the way out the back, right down here. So everything's hollow right in the very center of the boat. I designed it like this on purpose, so I can have all the drainage. For here, I'm probably just gonna have a hose running through this little box out the back. And then I don't think I'm gonna seal up any of these, probably just the 2 side end cabs, just so I can keep stuff in here. But for the gas one, it's just gonna be a regular lid, and if water leaks in, everything's more or less designed to leak into the back. But that's where we're at right now. Okay, so I got more of the hatch inner tracks and lids cut out. So I have the one for the storage, power panel, and both the rear hatches that I just have to weld together. I got the cooler one welded today. I just got to fill it in and weld it in place. Got the live well, rod locker, battery compartment, and the front bow. And then I need to get 2 6-foot sticks of 1-inch angle to make the outer frame for the step. And then for the rear gas tank, it's going to be only made out of 1-inch angle, and then it's not going to have the dry track here, because whatever leaks into here can just go right down into the back of the boat. But then yeah, I just need to get some hinges so I can set the right height of these to weld that track into place, grind down everything so it's smooth, fill in some more on the other sides here just to make it nice and strong, and then same thing on the bottom of the lids. I need to weld all those together, grind them flush. I think as long, from what it looks like, as long as I don't have anything too much around the edge here, I can put it in pretty thick on the back side of that. And then same thing on here, but I'm just trying to get them together right now, just to get it all together, but getting ready to add the hinges, and then I can rivet, secure everything down, and eventually I can make my template for the sheet to go over top of everything. Yeah, so I'll show you guys a little bit more in depth for these hatches. So there's a main outer hatch that's made out of this 1.5 inch angle, and it's what most of this boat's constructed with. So wherever you saw in part 1 how I made like the whole overall frame, I have these in a way that they're secured, and eventually they're going to be riveted down before the top sheet of aluminum goes on. But this is just 1.5 inch angle that's cut at a 45 and then welded together, kind of hastily, but good enough. So once you got the outer frames, what I've been working on are these dry tracks in the center here, and then this is the lid part. So eventually there's going to be a hinge. It goes right here. I'm also going to have a cutout for like the latch, probably a gas strut on some of them to keep them open. But again, these inner ones, they're just the measurement of the inside of the frame, and then I have 2 pieces. So some of them are going to sit like this to make that this piece here. So that makes that inner dry track that sits on the inside, and then these pieces are cut at an opposite angle to make the lid. So once I have the 2 pieces TIG welded together, I can eventually, I need to get, there's going to be a rubber seal that sits on here just to keep it nice and watertight when these are closed. Water won't be able to leak in, but it'll just kind of stop the moisture from getting in there, and also clanking around. I don't know how thick they are. I'm assuming only like the thickness of a dime or something like that. So that's why I haven't fully put these in. This one I just did to stop it from going in. This is a lot bigger of a gap than what I would like, but I'm basically just going to have a couple fat welds. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do a continuous seam all the way across, but I'm going to put enough that it's strong enough. And then on the top part here, I'm just going to put a thick bead of like silicone all the way across. And I also got to grind these down just to get them as visual, because this is the only part you're going to visually see. Everything else is going to be covered with the sheet. This will all be painted black. And then once this is all welded up strong, ground down, silicone sealed, and painted black, then I can put it back in the boat, rivet it down to its anchoring tabs where I have them to secure to that part of the frame, make sure it's nice and flush, and then those are permanently in there. Once all of those are done, then I can make a template using cardboard, because before I was originally going to just put the whole sheet on, and then I was going to like lie inside the boat and trace out everything. But now that there's going to be this dry track, it's going to be impossible for me to get my pen past there to get this angle right here. So I figured I'm just going to do the same thing what I did when I made the bottom one. I'm just going to take a bunch of pieces of cardboard, tape them all together to make my sheet. Once these are all in their permanent homes and not moving around, then I can know exactly where it needs to be, take that template, put it on this sheet, and then cut it out. This is a 10-foot sheet, and 10 feet, 8 feet is basically right about to this line. And then conveniently, I designed this to be exactly 2 feet. So with that 10-foot sheet, I can sheet up the entire top deck. There's going to be this square space here of extra that I'm not going to be needing part of that. So I should be able to make the 2 triangles to fill in this spot here and there. And then I need to get one more 4x8 sheet of just the thinner stuff I did for all these side panels. Because I'm going to make a box in the bottom half of here. So I figure if it's boxed out like this at a 45-degree angle, that's still a ton of storage space. But then on the back side where the fuel, I would still be able to reach down to like get at these connections there for the live well pump inlet, as well as the 2 bilges, because eventually this is all going to be covered. So I figure that's still a decent amount of space and access to get behind. And then I might have this raised up a bit, or I might just box out this one corner just for these lines here. Probably just going to box them out and then go right down to the floor. So this will be the floor of this hatch. And then probably just have like a little drainage hole on here, because everything's going to drain into the back there. This one, I originally didn't know what I wanted to do because I thought this was all going to be some dead space under here. But when I hold this part up to where it's going to be, you can barely even see it. So I figured that'd be a good space that all under here, and I'll have the wires all nicely like tucked up and zip tied up into their bundles. I think it'd be a good spot to like jam in some like life jackets, pair of boots, something that you're not regularly using, but you'd still be able to like look down into the hatch and get at it. And then these are also all going to be walled off on this side here. Cooler's going to sit right here. It's going to have a little drain hose that's going to funnel out to the back to let out all the water that builds up in there. I'm going to have to make a box just like I did for the live well, but for the cooler. And then I want to glue a bunch of insulation foam around it just to give it somewhat an attempt. Like it's going to be a crappy cooler, but it'll be better than nothing. And then I was also thinking about grabbing like a 6-inch ABS tube to run these through, because once this is all boxed up and there's a cooler over here, sure, it'll be an open space, but it's going to be a pain in the ass to get these wires. So I figure if I just have a plastic tube just spanning from this hatch to here underneath the cooler, then if I ever need to like reroute something and move it, I can just shove it down the tube. And I think it's too late to throw a tube down there. Just gonna have to deal with how that is. And then the other issue I came across is I temporarily have this clamp holding the top of my fuse panel on, and then there's going to be a bolt down at the bottom. I don't know if you can see that, but the bolt I'm still going to install, but I figured if I put a bolt up top of here, when this is all sheeted and covered, it's going to be impossible to get at. So I think, as ghetto as it is, I'm just going to use this clamp and leave it there, because granted I'd be reaching around the other side, but just for the sake of videotaping it, I should be able to get my hand still under here to undo the clamp. And then once the clamp's loose and the bolt's there, I can do it with the battery, but when you take the battery out, you can swing this over, because all the connections for everything is all in bus bars. So the one relay that controls all the floor lights has one wire that goes to this bus bar here, and then that's every floor light individually wired into there. So if there's any sort of an issue, I can just redo that one branch of wire or run a new one, add more. Like, I think most of them I got a lot of empty slots to add more lights, because I don't know if I want more hatch lights or not, and I actually don't even know how often I'm even really going to use this thing at nighttime, so it might all be a complete waste of time. But it's where we're at, and that's how you make these hatches. Alright, so I finished welding in all the tabs and tacking it up, because welding all the perimeters was taking too long, so I just riveted on these tabs, put welds on it there, so they're held up mechanically by the rivets, and then the welds just stop the tracks from jiggling around. And then I can fill in all those seams there with some black silicone, similar to what I did for the power box here at the bottom. So it's just got that nice black bead, and then hopefully when I paint it, it'll all just be seamless. And then I also gotta weld this to the bottom of there for the power panel. And then I still gotta cut out the outer frame for the step and fuel tank. And then I can make the frame and dry track for the step, and then all these are done. But tomorrow I'm gonna move on to sealing all these edges and stuff here, painting everything black. I got my struts in. Just doing some quick math, it looks like if I have it mounted, because it's like a 10-inch strut and it compresses about 3.5, so 3.5 would be that mark there, and then 10's here, so it would allow the hatch to open up about that big. But I also notched out the bottom part of the hatch there just so it can clear when it opens and closes. So I did that on all of them. I just have to put the hinges on. The hinges are going to go on afterwards on top of the sheet. I just have it with some electrical tape here just to kind of get a visual for it. But yeah, tomorrow I'm going to make the template as well, and then cut this out, because I also got to make the box for the cooler here, similar to this one. Also going to glue on some insulation to it. I got to weld that one on, and then yeah, I can start sheeting it and riveting everything down. It's going to start chugging away a lot faster. Going to get a couple more lights and figure out how I'm going to install these. And probably once they're sheeted, I'm just going to drill like a 3/4 inch hole and just push them through. Haven't fully decided that. Like, I know for these ones they'll all make sense because they're going to have their own boxes, but these are going to be open, so this will be opened up in there. So probably going to just do it into the sides when I get those panels in the future, in a month or so. That's not a huge rush. My first priority is just getting this top sheet cut out and riveted down, so then everything's theoretically watertight, and then it's basically just cosmetic interior stuff at that point, and getting the EVA foam for the top deck and all the siding. And then I'm also going to do all inside the hatches with the EVA. And then on the outside, I gotta sand off all this gray paint I temporarily put on. Just, I had too much, all the patches, and it was hard to tell what was what, so I just kind of wanted everything a consistent color. And then I'm gonna paint the bottom part silver, and then the top half like a sparkly blue. And then all the trim is gonna be black. I'm gonna paint all these black, so when you open it, everything you see is black, and then it will be all turfed on the inside with the same dark gray on all the edges. New goodies came in. So I got all my, well, just 4 of the locking hatches. I got the keys. They didn't give me any of the brackets, so I'm gonna have to take a angle and rivet it on there, and then I'm gonna round out the corner so it's not so sharp. And then I also got my shocks, and so I temporarily put a couple rivets in here, and then vaguely where these are going to be. Again, I'm going to have to make another bracket below there for it, but that's like its little like balance point. Oh yeah. I was worried at first because to like compress these by hand, they're like 22.5 pounds, and I was like, Jesus, you got to like really push on it. But once it's like hinged in here, it's actually pretty easy. Like I can do this with one finger. But yeah, I'm excited. Ooh, baby.